Hi, I'm Philip Brunton and welcome to Jazzplate lesson number 6. A reminder to download your lesson number 6 worksheet from MyMusicPB.com/jazzplate. Okay, so far we have learned a major chord, added a 6, a major 6, a minor 7 chord, a dominant 7th, and finally today a major 7 chord. Now a major 7 chord includes a major 3rd and that major 7th. And that's shown as you can see in your worksheet at the top as an uppercase letter followed by the letters MAJ for major and a 7. Sometimes you might see a triangle 7, and that's another way of referring to major 7. Since we're talking about major 7 chords today, it would be the ideal time in our warm-up to play through our major scales. Now, I presented these in the warm-up in a special way. I call these symmetrical scales. Each bar has 4 notes, and I call these sound patterns of a tone, tone, and a semitone. And you'll notice that every bar is either the bottom half of one major scale or the top half of a major scale. So we're going to play through our warm-up with major scales playing it this way. You'll notice I've set it up so it's even rhythm, not swing. So just before we begin, let's do our tuning note, concert A, 440. And one more. Okay. 2, 3, 4. So our next 3 set of exercises are to highlight the major 7 chords. It gives you an opportunity to get them into your fingers and hear what their sounds are. Okay, exercise number 1, I play, then you play. Exercise number 2, one after the next. 2, 3, 4. Exercise number 3, major sevenths in cycle of fifths. 2, 3, 4. Okay, if you go to page 2 of the worksheet, you'll see presented the major 7 chord along with all the notes from the major scale. And because it's a major bass scale and chord, that meaning the 3rd is major sounding, the 4th note will be our avoidance note because that's semitone clash. So when we're creating our pentatonic scale, we have our 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 and presented at the top of the worksheet, and we know that also has the same notes as the minor bass pentatonic from a different note. This being our last week on pentatonics, it's worth noting how we can add a few extra notes because we're only working with 5 notes. How can we add more to our melodies? So if we look at, we've talked in the past about non-harmonic tones. On the second line of the second page, you'll see those presented again. We have passing tones and auxiliary, upper and lower auxiliary notes we can add to our melody. Now we have what's called approach tones. When we're approaching a specific note, usually a chord tone, and we can come from above or below. And these are approach tones. And then we have surrounding notes. It's kind of the same idea, but high and low. So we're approaching, say, a chord tone coming from above, then down below, and so we say we're surrounding the note, and it's heading to its target note. So that's shown on the second line there. So here's an example of some extra notes we can add in on the 3rd line. I'll just play through here a simple little melody. So what we have there is the root 3rd and 5th. We have 2 surround tones to our target note of 5th, and then approach note from below to our 3rd, and then again 2 surround notes to our root. Now surround notes and approach notes can be diatonic, which means in the key of, or they can be chromatic. So we got extra notes we can add to our basic 5-note patterns. So you don't always need to fill your solos full of flashy notes. Some of the greatest solos include melodic lines that are almost singable. It makes the listener feel like they could sing it. With this in mind though, pentatonics are still very useful techniques to explore in your practicing. So what we want to do is build them into our fingers so that we know those really innately, so we can play with our ear and our heart rather than just our eyes and our fingers. I've built you a unique chart for pentatonics for your specific instrument, and you can download these from MyMusicPB.com/jazzplate. specific to your instrument range that covers 2 octaves plus a note above and below. This chart gets you playing your pentatonic patterns in all your major and relative minor keys while covering a greater range on your instrument, as I'm about to show you. This format also highlights the spaces created by a pentatonic 5-note scale. You find these very helpful when you're building up your own pentatonic patterns. Now, the first pentatonic pattern on page 2 you'll see is just playing the scale up and down. And that's obviously very helpful to get into your fingers. So I'd highly recommend you learn all that one. So here's an example from the C. So you'd ideally want to work on all these keys. So if I was to say in the key of G, major bass pentatonic, if I start on G, I'm going to be missing all those lower notes on my instrument. So we have 2 options. We can start from the lowest note, and you'll get. Or the option 2 is where you start on the actual G, and you work up full range and full range down and back to the G. Now, pattern number 2 is worth exploring because it's scale in thirds. So this is pattern number 2 for C pentatonic. So scale in thirds are really interesting because whereas a major scale in thirds, you'll always get the same 2 intervals, a third and a second. But because of a pentatonic, sometimes you get fourths. And sometimes for the skips, and sometimes you even get thirds for the steps. Okay, so an example in G, starting on the lower range of my instrument, option number 1. And now option 2, where I start on the G, going through my full range and back up. Learning pattern number 1 and pattern number 2 are great because then you can create your own patterns, doing some skips and steps. So pattern number 3 is an example one I've created here for you. We're going skipping for a couple, and then upwards, and then we step down a bit. So you can see, here's an example of pattern number 3 in C major. That's quite a blow. Now, having built your own pattern, then you can play around with it. You might want to, and here's an example of pattern number 3 where I've done some chromatic substitution. In this example, I'm chromatically working through each pentatonic scale, keeping to the same pattern from above. So the second bar, I'm starting from the second note of the pattern, and then the third bar from the third note of that pattern, so it follows the same from above. Now, the next pattern almost seems like the same. I'm doing chromatic substitution, but I'm just playing the first bar pattern, which starts on the first note of the pattern, and I'm just changing that, each chromatically working my way through. So just notice how these 2 patterns look a little different. So you can see that little difference. Pattern number 3 with tritone substitution, rather than just going chromatically at work my way through, quite useful is when you play a pattern and then go a tritone away, 3 whole tones, and what happens there is the third of one chord becomes the 7th of the other chord, and this is great on dominant 7th chords. So you might introduce that into your playing. So the final pattern I'm going to show you today is when we shift from shared notes. So I start with the first bar, And on the second bar, which starts on the second note of the pattern, that second note of the old chord becomes the third note of a new chord I've introduced, pentatonic pattern. And you can see them by either the second becomes the third of the new, and the next one is the fifth becomes the third, sixth of the next, etc. You mathematicians will like this one. So this is shifting from shared tones. Now, as I said before, your ideal target isn't to fill your solos full of flashy notes, but these pentatonic patterns can give you so many more creative ideas to work with when they're built into your fingers. So enjoy practicing these, come up with your own, and as we leave these pentatonics in this lesson, you can continue working on these on your own as we explore the further lessons ahead. So it's time to finish our lesson with some improvisation. I've got 2 examples for you today. Our first improvisation uses our minor 7 chord for 4 bars, using a minor bass pentatonic, our dominant 7th for 4 bars, using a major bass pentatonic, and a major 7 chord, again using a major bass pentatonic. For improvisation 1, I'll give you an example first. I'll play through twice, and you get some ideas and hear some what I'm doing, and then you'll have an opportunity to play through 4 times. Okay, it's your turn to improvise on this one. You'll go through 4 times. I'll let you know when each time starts. 2, 3, 4. So how did you do on that? The final improvisation gives us a chance to see how one pentatonic scale can work over an entire song. I've chosen a progression called rhythm changes, and it uses every single chord we've learned so far, including the major 6 you'll see in there. What you want to do is find out what key you're in, and then work out the pentatonic. If it's a major key or a minor key, you'll work out that major and minor pentatonic. In the bridge, which is the middle of the song, there's some extended dominant 7s. So you can also use some pentatonics based on each of those if you want. I'll give you an example playing through the entire piece, and then after you're going to have a chance to play through it, the whole form twice. Just using one pentatonic, or if you want to add those dominant 7 pentatonics in the middle, you're welcome to. So this is called Rhythm Changes, And here's an example. So now it's your turn to play. As I say, it's a chance just to play around with just one scale to fit through the whole piece. If you want to add different pentatonics for each of the dominant sevenths, feel free to do so. Okay, so this is rhythm changes. We're going to go through twice. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well done. Now, I'm not advocating one scale fits all the time. It's just an opportunity to get improvising over an amazing set of chord progressions, especially if you're teaching young jazz students. Now we're going to leave lesson 6 and the pentatonics and move on to diatonic chord scales, when we'll look at a set of chords like that and know what scale fits each chord, and it gives a whole new color to our improvisation. So I look forward to seeing you in lesson number 7. Bye for now.